Turn with me to Daniel chapter 2, please. Daniel chapter 2. We will pick up in verse 10. Little background for you. This is the famous passage involving Nebuchadnezzar's dream, in which God reveals the history of great kingdoms, empires of the world. And what Nebuchadnezzar does here is unusual insofar as he refuses to tell his wise men what the dream was before asking an interpretation. In this case, he says to them, "Tell me both the dream and the interpretation." And the wise men, of course, are beside themselves because without knowing the dream, how are they supposed to interpret it? And how are they to know the dream? So verse 10, they are answering the king's demands. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who could declare the matter for the king, inasmuch as no great king or ruler has ever asked anything like this of any magician, conjurer, or Chaldean. Moreover, the thing which the king demands is difficult, and there is no one else who could declare it to the king except God's, whose dwelling place is not with mortal flesh." Because of this, the king became indignant and very furious and gave orders to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain. And they looked for Daniel and his friends to kill them. Let me just pause right there. As best I can tell, verse 1 of chapter 2 tells us that this is just in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel and his friends, you'll recall, were captured and taken for 3 years to prepare them to join the advisors of the king. So presumably, they're still in training. So they had to go elsewhere to find Daniel and his friends, but they're going to kill all of them. Verse 14, then Daniel replied with discretion and discernment to Arioch, the captain of the king's bodyguard, who had gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He said to Arioch, the king's commander, "For what reason is the decree from the king so urgent?" Then Arioch informed Daniel about the matter. So Daniel went in and requested of the king that he would give him time in order that he might declare the interpretation to the king. Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter, so that they might request compassion from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. And here's where we really want to zero in, beginning in verse 19. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, "Let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings. He gives wisdom to wise men and knowledge to men of understanding. It is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power. Even now you have made known to me what we requested of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter." And as you'll recall, Daniel goes into the king and reveals it, presumably even saves the Chaldeans. I want to focus here on the state of our own nation. As I hope everybody in the building knows, there was an attempt on former President Trump's life last night. The Democratic Party is in turmoil over trying to replace Joe Biden as their nominee. And as we have looked around us, our own walls are basically falling in upon ourselves. It is a great time to seek the very God who Daniel and his friends sought. Look at, in particular here, before we get to that, the meat of this passage, in verse 17. Daniel sought out the king for time in order that he might seek the face of God. But he doesn't do it alone. He does it with his companions, his faithful friends, who are also believers. So for us, when we come together, there is power in corporate prayer. Let us seize this opportunity today. Now, in verses 19 through 23, look that first, the mystery was revealed to Daniel. We don't exactly understand what a night vision may have been, but Daniel cries out to the God of all creation, and God, in his mercy, answers him. What a beautiful, encouraging thing this is for us. And note in verse 20, Daniel doesn't forget where his answered prayer comes from. Let the name of God be blessed forever and ever. Is this not the chief end of man, that we should be glorifying God and enjoying him forever? For wisdom and power belong to him. We know this pretty much almost without thinking about it today, but consider, if you will, wisdom without power. What does that get you? But frustration. It's impotent at the end of the day, right? Likewise, power without wisdom. What a dangerous, disastrous thing that is. In fact, we've seen that often in our own day with rulers who have enormous power, but very, very little wisdom. But our God is all wise, all powerful. May we praise his great name. Verse 21, it is he who changes the times and the epochs. We know this again, right? How about Acts 17 that reminds us God has determined our appointed times, even the boundaries of nations. They are in his hands. Our time, our days, our moments are in his hands. Daniel recognizes this. He removes kings and establishes kings. We like to think, and the nations like to think, that in our own country, for instance, the outcome of elections determines who is in office. Whether you consider the outcome of the last presidential election as legitimate or not, ultimately, all power resides in the hands of God, God alone, right? He determines who reigns and for how long. He raises them up, he brings them down. He gives wisdom to men, he gives power and authority to rulers. We need to remember who it is that really controls our own times and epochs. It is not men, it is God and God alone. He gives knowledge to men of understanding. Daniel, of course, is the recipient here of the mystery. This is hidden knowledge. In fact, this whole chapter and the story of Nebuchadnezzar and his dream, isn't it extraordinary that the God who knows the future, the end from the beginning, would reach out to this pagan king who at the time thought he was king of kings and reveal to him the history of kingdoms for ages to come. We are still experiencing the outcome of that dream that Nebuchadnezzar receives. So God gives knowledge even really to men that have very little or no understanding, but it is he alone that gives. Verse 22, it is he who reveals the profound and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. Again, we sort of take these things for granted, but isn't it good every so often to slow down and consider again that it is our God who himself alone sets the sun in the heavens to give us the light of day, but he in many respects is the sun of the soul, the sun of all creation, all time. He who is outside of time alone has the light that enlightens the world. And of course, at the end of the day, it is Jesus Christ, the light of the world, who enlightens us from within, right? So even here, you see that kind of picture pointing to Christ. And consider how God has ordained, even in these last few hours, exactly how things unfolded. The young man who apparently took the shots at President Trump was in a good position as a shooter. He had a clear line of vision. Apparently, he had an adequate weapon. He, in fact, killed a bystander. So his ammunition was lethal. He had basically a good shooting position also. He was stable on this rooftop. So everything lined up, humanly speaking, for him to make a kill shot. And apparently, he ends up grazing Trump's ear. So it was a matter of centimeters, maybe a slight breeze the Lord could have sent. A little twitch in the trigger finger could have altered that shot ever so little and killed President Trump. But God. Not only are the big times and seasons within his control, but the moments, right? The little instances, the vagaries of just a slight little twitch. It's all in God's hand. He has the power to change things. He has the power to raise up those leaders and to take them out in his own time, in his own way. Let's not ever forget that it is not chance that brings us here. It's not chance that saved President Trump, and it's not chance that will determine the outcome of our election in a few months. It is God who gives and God who takes away. Daniel, in verses 27 and 28, which we did not read, when he's answering the king, he explains and basically picks up on the word that the Chaldeans had said. No man could do this. Daniel says, he answered before the king and said, as for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners are able to declare it to the king. However, verse 28, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. Daniel, as we all should, gives glory and praise to the one true God. He knows it wasn't him in his own wisdom that was able to answer King Nebuchadnezzar's request. It is God, God alone, who reveals the profound and hidden things. And let us not forget, as it were, the end of the matter. Flip over, if you will, to verse 44. As Daniel reveals the dream and unveils the truth that God has revealed to Nebuchadnezzar, he says in verse 44, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. As we know, that is the picture of Jesus Christ, the stone which is the stumbling stone for the Jews and the unbelievers, but it is that stone which crushes the kingdoms of the earth and which itself establishes the kingdom that will never end, the kingdom that man cannot touch, however powerful, the kingdom of the great God, the kingdom of heaven, as it were. So we this day are given a great opportunity. Let us pray for former President Trump, that perhaps this is the time when God can get a hold of his heart and bring him to see that he lives today only by the grace of God. For for President Trump, or for President Biden and those in authority, that they recognize that there is one God who rules and reigns in the affairs of men, that their authority is itself a delegated authority, and that they, like all of us, need to bow before him. And pray for our nation and for us, that we would turn back to him, repenting of our own wicked ways, and cry out to him, pray and seek his face. Let's go to that great God.